Ned Kelly is believed to have been born in 1855 in Beveridge, Victoria. He is one of 8 children to Red Kelly, who was transported from Tipperary Island to Van Diemen's Land, Tasmania, to serve 7 years for stealing 2 pigs. In 1860, the Kellys moved to Avenel, where Ned attended school, and they rent a 40-acre farm. As an 11-year-old boy in 1866, Ned risked his life to save another boy from drowning and was given a green sash from the grateful family. In the same year, Ned's father died of consumption, and the family moved to Greta, near Glenrowan, and acquired 80 acres at 11 Mile Creek. In Ned's time, it was wild, rugged country, and life was hard. The best land was held by a handful of wealthy squatters, but Ned's family was poor, and the only opportunity they had to own land was as selectors. For many, it was an impossible situation, with the selections of land too small and the soil too poor for them to make a living. Faced with poverty, selectors often sold horses and cattle from the wealthy squatters. The Kellys were often suspected of horse and cattle stealing, but they were never convicted for it. The police had taken a disliking for the Kellys and were often charged with offences which were mostly dropped through lack of evidence. In 1869, a passing Chinese pig and fowl trader named R. Fook visits the Kelly family farm asking for water. But things turn sour and 14-year-old Ned assaults him with a bamboo stick and chases him away. R. Fook went to the police and Ned was held on remand for 10 days, but the charge was later dismissed. Ned became the helper of an experienced bushranger, Harry Power, who was an ex-convict who had taken to the bush after escaping from Pentridge jail. Together they robbed highway travellers, and Ned was charged with robbery under arms and held in custody for 7 weeks, but again the charges were dismissed. Later, in 1870, Ned was convicted for assault and indecent behaviour and sentenced to 6 months' jail. On release from prison, Ned found a horse for a wild right and was on his way to return it when police in Greta stopped him, as the horse was stolen. 16-year-old Ned fought with the police and was eventually sentenced to 3 years hard labour for receiving a stolen horse. On release from the jail, Ned sought vengeance and fought and won a bare-knuckle fight with a wild right that lasted 20 rounds. Some years later, in 1877, Ned was locked up overnight for being drunk and riding a horse over a footpath in Benalla. In the next day, he ran away from the 4 policemen escort and hid in a shoemaker's shop. A brawl started which involved Ned's archenemy, Constable Lonergan. On the 15th of April 1878, Constable Fitzpatrick had been drinking and went to the Kelly house to follow up on a horse-stealing arrest warrant for Ned's brother Dan Kelly. Fitzpatrick stayed in the house for over an hour, and when he was unable to present a warrant on demand for Ned's mother Ellen, he drew his pistol. After a scuffle, Dan disarmed him, but the policeman was shot in the hand. Fitzpatrick rode back to Benalla and reported that he had been attacked by the Kellys. Ned and Dan escaped to the bush, but Ellen and her baby were jailed for 3 years for aiding and abetting attempted murder. Ned and Dan Kelly were later joined by their friends, Joe Byrne and Steve Hart. The Kelly gang was formed. They went into hiding in the Wombat Ranges. On the 25th of October 1878, a police search party comprising Sergeant Kennedy and Constables McIntyre, Lonergan and Scanlon was sent to the capture of the Kelly gang. McIntyre and Lonergan set up camp, while Kennedy and Scanlon searched Stringybark Creek. The police gave away the camp position to the Kellys by shooting parrots, and at 5 p.m, whilst the police were making tea, the Kelly gang made a surprise attack and ordered bail up. McIntyre surrendered, but Lonergan ran for cover and went for his pistol. Ned Kelly shot and killed him. The gang then waited with McIntyre for the return of Kennedy and Scanlon. As they approached on horseback, Ned ordered, "Put up your hands," but both policemen went for their guns and Ned shot Scanlon dead on his horse. Kennedy made for a run for it, but Ned chased him down and mortally wounded him. When Kennedy died, Ned stole the fob watch off his dead body. In the heat of gun shootout, McIntyre escaped on horseback as a result of the killings at Stringybark Creek. The Kelly gang were made outlaws and could be shot on sight with a reward of £500. 2 months later, in December 1878, the gang bailed up the homestead of Faithful's Creek, leaving Joe Byrne in charge of the prisoners. The rest of the gang went into Euroa and cut the telegraph wires, robbed the bank of £2,000 and returned to the homestead. As a result, the police arrested all known Kelly sympathisers without charge, which caused a groundswell of support for the Kellys. On the 8th of February 1879, the Kellys surrounded the police barracks at Jerilderie in New South Wales. On the following Sunday, 2 of the Kellys, dressed in police uniforms, escorted a policeman's wife to church. On Monday, with their police prisoners, the Kellys held up the Royal Hotel and took £2,000 from the adjoining bank and burnt mortgage papers in the hotel. Ned recited the famous Jerilderie letter describing his view on the happenings and treatment of his family and Irish Catholics by the police, which was later sent to the Governor of Victoria. As a result, the reward for the Kellys was increased to £8,000, equivalent to $2 million today. The Kellys discovered that their former friend, Aaron Sherritt, had informed police about a planned robbery of the banks in Benalla. On 26th of June 1880, the gang went to Sherritt's house in Sebastopol, and Joe Byrne shot and killed him. The next day, the Kellys held up the townsfolk of Glenrowan in Annie Jones' Inn. The Kellys uplifted the railway tracks in hope of derailing the police train that was bound for Glenrowan, but the local teacher, Thomas Curnow, warns the train with a lantern wrapped in a red scarf, and the police arrive safely. The Kelly gang are heavily armed with pistols and rifles and have made bulletproof armour from ploughshares but left their legs still exposed. The armour was 6mm thick and weighed 41 kilos each. The 21 police and black trackers from the train surrounded the inn with the gang and about 40 hostages inside. The siege of the inn started at about 3 a.m. and went through the night into the next day. It was dark and therefore difficult for the police to fire their guns accurately. Ned escaped the inn and attacked the police from behind, but was eventually brought down by shots to his legs by Sergeant Steele, and then captured at about 3 p.m. The police set fire to the inn. Joe Byrne died of bullet wounds and was removed from the blaze, but Dan Kelly and Steve Hart, already dead, burned in the fire. 2 hostages were killed and the police leader, Superintendent Hare, was wounded. As the only survivor of the gang, Ned was taken to Melbourne and stood for the trial of murder. He was sentenced to death and hanged at 10 a.m. on 11th of November 1880, with the parting words of "Such is life." He was 25 years old, but his legend still lives on in Australian folklore.